Good day and welcome to this Astranti bite-sized video on a topic that's going to be really relevant to any of you students studying for your certificate BA2 or your BA4s, or even those of you studying for your F1s. But I've given those exam names, but really we're looking at something today that CIMA expect you to keep at the forefront of your mind all through your CIMA studies, right until you get to your SCS case study, and that's ethics. And in today's video I'm going to start with one question. How can we act ethically? How can we make sure no laws are broken so the handcuffs are never applied to us? Well, luckily for professional accountants, we've got the IFAC Code. Now, IFAC, for those of you that don't know, is the International Federation of Accountants and is the global organization for the accountancy profession. And in fact, the CIMA principles that we're going to look at in this section have actually been taken and adopted from policies based by IFAC. And the suggestions that we're going to go on to are also really good guides to just general standards of behaviour which can be applied to external auditors when reviewing financial statements. So let's have a look at CIMA's 5 fundamental ethical principles. And here we go. We've got the 5 dots on the bottom, and these 5 fundamental principles form the basis of the code, and they are integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, professional behaviour, and finally we have confidentiality. Now, all of those are pretty easily understood terms, so I'm sure we've kind of already got an idea of what this is going to entail. But let's see how they apply specifically to accountancy. And we're going to start with integrity. And integrity is all about making sure that all our business and professional relationships, we are direct and we are honest. As accountants, you should not be associated with any false or misleading statements or anything that is even misleading by omission. So not actually misleading, but by the fact that some information has been withheld, the statement itself becomes misleading. And it also means acting consistently, making sure that this is upheld at all times. Well, let's have an example of this. Let's imagine for a moment that your superior asks you to misstate information that you know isn't correct. If you're acting with integrity, how would you respond, or how should you respond? Well, you wouldn't misstate the information, because you're not being honest, are you there? And that directly contravenes what we've just been talking about. You shouldn't be associated with any information you believe to be false or anything that can end up misleading anybody that's going to use those financial documents. So there we go, that's integrity. Let's slide along now to objectivity. And objectivity is a term we've used a lot. We've certainly used it in conjunction with independence. And of course, it means acting impartially, making sure that you're not biased by anything, that you have no conflicts of interest or certainly no illicit relationships that really would affect your professional judgment. So no, this is what we've just been talking about in independence, really, isn't it? That no one should have a relationship with anyone that's being audited, for example. But let's have another example just to make sure we're exactly clear. So let's think of an accountant. Now, they shouldn't accept any kind of hospitality, especially excessive hospitality, from anybody whose work that they have had to review. Now, that's quite obvious why they shouldn't do that, surely. Because, of course, the professional judgment may become tempered by feelings of embarrassment or worry that they've taken this hospitality, so now they can't do their job to their full extent. So that's objectivity. We now slide along again to professional competence and due care. Now, we've talked, haven't we, that one of CIMA's ideas is that someone must always keep learning. Just because you pass your exams doesn't mean you should stop. You should also always evaluate where you are lacking in your competencies. And this principle is just really saying the same thing. It's just making sure that individual skills and standards are always maintained so that they are able to practice with the full competence. And that means keeping up to date with new legislation, new techniques. And of course, if there's any gaps in the knowledge, then it's important that should be disclosed and worked upon. And an example of this, I think it's just in screen for you, would be making sure that you attended professional courses to make sure your knowledge is always updated and you know the latest standards and rules. And the due care section of this headline, or this heading rather, refers really to making sure the work is carried out carefully and diligently so that everyone knows that it's done correctly. So let's slide along now to professional behaviour. And again, this is something we've also always talked about, isn't it? The regulatory bodies and your peers will expect you to uphold the profession. And with professional behaviour, you must not do anything that would end up discrediting the profession. You have to comply with the relevant laws and regulations. And again, just to emphasise, you should always be honest and truthful as a professional accountant. So let's have an example about professional behaviour. I think that EG is just on screen. Apologies if it isn't. So, professional behaviour, number one. The accountant shouldn't go around making claims about their qualifications if they can't be supported. They shouldn't make claims about their services also, again, if these can't be supported, if these are untrue, if they're misleading or dishonest in any way. And they certainly shouldn't make disparaging references to the work of other accountants in their field, or really say anything dishonest or untrue. That's all making sure an accountant acts professionally. And now we move on to the final of the fifth fundamental principle of CIMA, which is confidentiality. And this is especially important because accountants are in a position where they have to safeguard really private information that they can obtain through professional relationships. They, of course, shouldn't use any information they come across to gain personal advantage or disclose any unauthorized information to parties that shouldn't be party to them. They also shouldn't disclose professional information in a private or social setting. So, for example, again, that might not just be on screen, apologies if it's not, an accountant shouldn't discuss a colleague's financial information with one of their family members. And it's important to note that confidentiality carries on even though a professional relationship may be ended. Of course, there is an exception to this rule, which is disclosure. That's the legal or professional right to disclosure. Now, CIMA suggests there are circumstances in which confidential information can be disclosed. So let's take a look. The first of those is if there's been a legal infringement, in which case disclosure is required by law. You are also allowed to disclose when you're authorized by a client or employee, or when disclosure is permitted by law during an investigation, say. So this is slightly different to the first one, which is required by law. This is permitted by law. And in doing so, you are protecting your own professional reputation. And also when disclosure is professionally permissible. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to tell you a story, okay? And during this story, we're going to see about an accountant whose name is Paschal. And you're going to see if Paschal ever breaches the code of ethics, and in doing so, which ethic, which of these 5 fundamentals does he break, if he breaks any at all. And I want you to kind of maybe make a note, write it down. Now, I'm going to read you the story. I'm going to put a few icons on screen, but it might be worth your while to pause me, rewind again as I tell you the story. See if you can just find out all the information where Paschal might have acted incorrectly. So let me read you the story through, and then again, pause me and rewind it, and then we'll go on and find out the answers. So let's get going and say hello to Paschal, who's just passed his CIMA certificate exams, and fantastic, he's got his first accountancy job at Un-Ethi-Cal. So upon arrival, he said, "Whoa, can you do our company's corporation tax returns?" And now Paschal's not really sure how he should be doing this, but he doesn't want to be found out in his first week of work, does he? So he goes, "Yeah, sure, no problem." He thinks, what I'm going to do is just look it up online and I'll find out how to do it. Now, he's in a bit of a rush as well because he's off out to celebrate at a party that night. So although he can't work out the tax return that properly, he wants to get cracking in and fill it in quick as he can. Now, also, he wants to make an impression, doesn't he, in his first week at work, and he hopes to save Un-Ethi-Cal some money. So whenever he's not sure particularly of the right answer, he just goes for the option that leaves the cheapest tax. So he keeps Un-Ethi-Cal happy, doesn't he? He then goes off to his party. He's telling everyone how amazing his first day at work is, and he's making his company huge profits and how much he's already saved them. And he says to everyone, my future is bright. Now, the question I'm going to ask you is Paschal's future bright? So what I'm going to ask you to do now is to stop me, pause me, maybe get some notepad out, maybe rewind me, and just put out the 5 principles that we've just gone through. And then listen to the story again and find out where, if any, of the 5 principles have been broken. Then switch me back on and we'll get going and run through the list. Okay, does that sound good? Fantastic. Okay, so pause me and then restart me again for the answers. So, hopefully you've got all the answers written down somewhere. We are going to start with integrity. How did Paschal act? Did he act with integrity? Well, no, pretty much straight off the bat, Paschal lied, didn't he? I mean, he shouldn't have lied about knowing how to do the corporation tax return because, of course, it's dishonest. That dishonesty undermines any trust he would have built up with a new employer. And now he's not able to do the job he has been assigned of because of this one lie. So already he's fallen foul of integrity, and we move on to objectivity. Now, has he been objective? Well, no, because he was going through the company's corporation tax return, and he showed bias towards Un-Ethi-Cal, didn't he? He should have applied the rules without bias, no matter whether it was his company or not. Even if there's negative consequences because of that, he should have acted with independence and objectivity. Now we move on to professional competence and due care. Well, straight away he shouldn't have done the company's corporation tax return, should he? Because he didn't know how to do it. And even after he started it, he didn't act with any due care. He didn't do it diligently because he was just off to a party, so try to do it as best he can. How about professional behaviour? Well, no, Paschal, he's not even applied the tax rules properly. And he's actually, what he's doing is potentially committing a crime on behalf of his organisation. And then he goes off to his party and he lets it all out. So he's not even keeping it to himself, is he? Oh, Paschal has had a nightmare. He's not been confidential. He's disclosed how much Un-Ethi-Cal is making and how much money he was saving them. So really, Paschal has been very, very naughty indeed. He could really risk being brought up in front of CIMA's ethics committee, potentially being fined, and potentially being thrown out of the institute. As well as that, even though he was thinking he was acting in his best interest, he put his company at risk because he's done the tax returns incorrectly, so they could be in violation of the tax law of the jurisdiction they're in. So, Paschal thought he was acting in the best way he could, but he should have followed these 5 principles that the IFAC Code has set up and the CIMA has taken on to make sure that you're acting in the best way possible for yourself and for your company. So there we go. Thank you very much for listening to today's video. I hope you found it useful and I hope you can apply it to your exams. And even if you can't, I hope that it keeps you out of prison during your career. And if you want more videos on certificate level or different levels, be sure to like this video or subscribe to our channel. Many thanks and good luck with your revision.